This is a film about water. This is a film about the Quilcene Snow watershed located on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. It is about the people, plants, and animals who live there, and it is about the challenge of wisely managing water for now and future generations. We need it for drinking, industry, farms, recreation, and fish habitat. Like many places in the country and on the planet, the citizens of our area are realizing that water is not an unlimited resource. How we decide as a community to deal with these challenges will shape our lives and landscape. Many people have been studying this watershed that ranges from the Big Quilcene River to the Jimmecumlately at Squim Bay. Others may wonder, what's the problem? It's wet here.
What we have here in East Jefferson County is a problem with spatial distribution of precipitation. Most of the precipitation here falls in the Olympic Mountains, and because of the rain shadow effect, less precipitation falls towards the coastal areas where people live. So we have had to go to somewhat extraordinary measures to bring rainfall through stream diversions, in the case of the city of Port Townsend, to where the people are. So we actually have pretty significant infrastructure for such a small community that brings water to the populace. Well, the reason why these kinds of seasonal variations, the high amount of precipitation in winter and summer drought is significant is because there's no water or less water available when you need it most in the summertime. Fish need flows for spawning during the late summer and fall periods. And at those times you do see a lot of irrigation as well, at least during the summer and late summer periods. So there's a lot of competition for water resources late in the summer and early fall when essentially everyone needs it the most.
Cities and counties are required to plan 20 years ahead. Counties and cities adopt plans for growth based on those 20-year population projections so that appropriate levels of service, be that transportation, sewer, utilities, and relevant to this discussion, water, can be adequately provided for. I think right now the population of the county is, based on the 2000 census, was 26,000. I think now it's roughly 28,000. It's projected to go up to 40,000. The largest areas of growth in the county right now are going to be, outside of Port Townsend, will be the Port Hadlock Tri-area and the Port Ludlow and Shine areas.
We are left with the questions. Will there be enough water for future uses? How do we manage this resource? In order to answer these questions, it's important to look at history. Humans have always struggled with how to share and manage water. From the earliest civilizations, people have written laws about managing water resources. One common theme echoes throughout history. Water is a common, shared resource.
One of the great ways to think about water law is to remember the over 500 years of admiralty and fisheries law that we had in Europe and the United States. If you can imagine a system where we had to calculate when these large schooners would get caught in storms going around the Magellan Straits, these beautiful wooden vessels that we see in Puget Sound and in Port Townsend, they'd get in a storm, and sometimes one merchant's goods would have to be thrown overboard to save the ship and the well-being of the entire vessel and its goods. So when they would get eventually to the port, instead of one merchant having an entire windfall of profit and the other merchant who may have lost their goods to basically save the entire vessel losing everything, for over 500 years Admiralty law and water law was so pragmatic that they would sit down and say, no, we're jointly invested in the well-being of this ship and these goods, and they would insure and cross-cover each other's liability so that everybody gained instead of a win-lose situation. Imagine it's the same thing in our watershed today. We know that in private property that is invested with also public waters that flow over it, through it, and under it, that there's no right to pollute or speculate or waste water. We always have had this tradition for basically 2,000 years, from Roman through Admiralty, through prior appropriations and first and right, to maximize the net social benefit of how we come together to manage water. It's like being joint shareholders in a common and public resource for the benefit of us all.
Both in history and in current law, a water right is a right to use the commonly owned resource. The Washington State Surface Water Code, enacted in 1917, established that the waters of the state are public and that new uses need a permit. It also established the first in time, first in right principle and the protection of existing water rights.
The Water Resources Management Act was passed in 1971. It was the legislature's attempt really to come up with a comprehensive program for managing water resources in the state. The act laid out some general principles for doing so. It also talked about maximum net benefits that were sort of an economic test to be applied in managing and protecting water resources. And so it had a very broad base, but we also found that some of the objectives were not entirely clear. So in the year 2002, the legislature came back and amended the act, and they provided for 3 primary objectives: to meet water supplies for people, meaning municipal and domestic water use, water for agricultural use, such as irrigation, and finally, water for fisheries.
So, first of all, in the state of Washington, water is a public resource that is held in trust for the people of the state. Private parties can put the water to use, and the Department of Ecology is the agency charged with allocating water in accordance with the water rights permitting system. And to allocate water, what the agency has to do is make sure that the water right is issued consistent with a 4-part test. The first part is water available? The second part is, will the water be put to beneficial use? The third part is, can a water right be issued without adversely impacting an existing senior right? And the fourth part is, will the water right be issued consistent with the public interest? So those are the 4 considerations we make in issuing a water right.
In addition to its water management responsibilities, the state of Washington must uphold its treaty obligations and collaborate with the governments of Native American tribes. Native American tribes have fishing rights in their usual and accustomed areas. A right to productive salmon habitat is associated with tribal fishing rights. This applies directly to levels of flow left in rivers and streams. The priority date of habitat flows has been characterized in court cases as time immemorial, making this the senior right. In the Quilcene Snow watershed, many water rights have been issued. These rights provide for the use of water for people, industries, and farms.
The Little Quilcene comes off of Mount Townsend, which is about 7 miles away. The irrigation system draws water about a mile upstream from here into a ditch, through a fish screen, and then down the ditch through the valley here, into my irrigation pond, back out of the pond, and down the valley. The water right came from the late 1800s, early 1900s.
The city got the water right for the Big Quilcene River and the Little Quilcene River in 1927 as part of the deal to bring the Port Townsend Paper Company to town. We have a water right of 30 cubic feet per second, or CFS, on the Big Quilcene River, and that equates to a little over 19 million gallons per day. The city and the paper mill have an agreement contract that the paper mill is responsible for the operation and maintenance of the water line as well as the diversion headworks.
So, in the Quilcene Snow watershed, water rights have been allocated for out-of-stream uses for people and farms. But what about in-stream uses? In Washington State, the Department of Ecology is mandated under state law to establish state water management rules that protect and preserve in-stream uses for fish, wildlife, recreation, navigation, aesthetics, water quality, and livestock watering.
Fish need a variety of flows, and it depends on the species. For example, you've got your chum salmon that come in the summertime and early fall, called the summer chum. They come in when the flows are really, really low, and they need to be able to find a place to hide, so they need some kind of cover, they need some kind of depth, and they also need enough flow going across the gravel so that the eggs can incubate and survive once they are laid in the gravel. And they basically are in the gravel as an egg until the early winter, early spring. They emerge from the gravel, and then shortly after that they'll leave and go out to saltwater. The low flow period is particularly critical because you get fish entering in at a time when the waters are fairly warm. You can have a temperature issue where they can be lethal or even sublethal, and it can affect their ability to spawn and survive in the creek. And you also have dissolved oxygen issues as a result of lower temperatures. You can also have obstructions, which would not be a barrier at higher flow, be a barrier at a lower flow. A simple log across the creek for a summer chum, since they're not very good jumpers, they would come up against that log and stop right there and spawn downstream of that point. In the case of coho, another good example would be to access the upper reaches of these creeks and get into the side tributaries. They need some pretty high flows to do that, and we found that the fish actually do penetrate further into the watersheds when they have higher flows during the wintertime. And when you compare the survival of the young to the smolt stage when they enter the ocean, you see a lot higher contribution per female from a fish that has been able to penetrate further into the watershed. So these natural high flows are just as important to protect as the summer low flows.
Well, the Watershed Planning Act, again, was a voluntary process by which watershed groups could form and apply for monies through the state to develop a watershed plan. And these plans were to look at water quantity, sort of a water budget, how much water was available, and also the option of looking at water quality, habitat, and in-stream flows. So the watershed plans were to really look at all the needs in the watershed to satisfy existing water right uses, future development, as well as the natural resource base necessary for healthy fisheries.
The Quilcene Snow Watershed Planning Unit is comprised of local residents representing various viewpoints. These residents worked as a group since 1999 to author the WIRA 17 Watershed Management Plan. The Quilcene Snow Watershed is divided into 10 subbasins. As part of their work, the planning unit commissioned a Phase 1 technical assessment of the watershed. This assessment looked at the issues of water quantity, water quality, in-stream flows, and habitat in each basin. The Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Department of Ecology then performed field studies and computer modeling to further analyze the needs for in-stream flows. The WIRA 17 Quilcene Snow Watershed Planning Unit recommended in-stream flows. These flows are recommended by the planning unit by consensus of the members present. The Department of Ecology then develops a draft in-stream flow rule. After receiving public comments, the Department of Ecology then adopts the final rule. Once the flow rules are set, they become a water right and affect any water right applications made thereafter. They have no effect on water rights that existed before the in-stream flow was set by rule. Has the process thus far been nice and orderly? Not necessarily. The West is, after all, the place that bore the phrase, "Whiskey is for drinking, water is for fighting." The process to adopt an in-stream flow rule in the WIRA 17 Quilcene Snow Watershed got off to a rocky start. However, in November 2005, the Department of Ecology made a number of commitments to the residents of the Quilcene Snow Watershed. These commitments include the following. We recognize and appreciate the creativity, experience, and knowledge of the people in the basin, and hope to involve everyone interested in the development of innovative solutions designed to better support human use and in-stream resources. So the question is, to use a common phrase, can we let the past be water under the bridge? Can we roll up our sleeves and get down to the challenging yet vital business of managing our water for now and in the future, for people, farms, and fish?
Baby, love together we must go till we get the healing done. Till we get the